supportive of land use changes that have been made. The region recognizes a very strong level of service there and creating very strong transit corridors. We also think bringing those standards up to a fairly equal standard over the day is very beneficial to our workforce in terms of providing more, if you will, solid shifts, fewer split shifts, and beginning to actually provide a more standard, if you will, workday for more of our operators. So you might also remember our earlier presentation where we said that to bring those 12 lines en max up to that frequent level of service would be an investment of about $7.8 million total. That's the subsidy, so that's net of fares. Fares would contribute more of that. But in terms of what we would need to find in terms of the resource would be 7.8. And I think this continues to be, at least for me and I think our staff, a priority. There's other benefits, by the way, which is that if we can also even out the service, we find less bus bunching, we find less overcrowding, we find more on-time service, if we can even out the service levels throughout the day. We believe that we have an opportunity to do something before the next budget year regarding frequent service. And the earliest that we could do right now would be at March of 14. And that's because there is a ramp up associated with getting these schedules changed and new operators trained and brought on board to actually be able to fulfill those requirements. That would require a decision by really the end of October, which is your October board meeting. So we are beginning to put together a proposal that would dedicate an initial $2 million of general fund resource to the frequent service restoration. That will buy $2.8 million of service with the fares added to that level. And that $2 million comes from two specific sources. One is the additional contract revenue that we are receiving based on the news I shared with you at a previous meeting from the advertising revenue contract. Recall that our forecasts have predicted a pretty dramatic drop in advertising revenue. No doubt advertising revenue will still drop, but the guarantees that we got and revising that contract actually produced $1 million per year more than we had forecasted. So there's $1 million there. And then another additional $1 million, as Randy, following on that conversation, in non-union healthcare costs. It's, I think, premature to begin to commit the union healthcare savings in any way, shape, or form because it's still subject to negotiations. It's an expired contract. We don't know for sure what our obligations are going to be related to the union healthcare contracts under this new, or costs under this new contract. So that would produce, again, about $2.8 million of service, which gets us quite a ways toward our goal. But it does require us to hold all costs to forecast level otherwise, and that other revenue sources come in as planned. And so we'll be able to check that also to the first quarter results and make sure that we're on track associated with that. Checking with Dave just yesterday, as a matter of fact, it appears that payroll tax are perhaps just slightly under forecast, but generally tracking pretty good as well as fair revenue. So we're feeling generally positive about that right now. So, and again, my intent would be to make this the first step of a series of investments that we want to make associated with restoring this frequent service interval throughout the system. The priority will be bus, and the priority within bus will be the corridors that serve our transit-dependent populations most, and the time of day that are most critical for that. So we're going through a fairly detailed analysis that are taking in those factors, and we'll be ready to present some additional information relating to that to you at your September 25th meeting. I'd be happy to have any questions you might have about that piece.
I'm seeing that.
And speaking of the future, I did want to just sort of mention a couple other projects that we're beginning to work on. And we will, first of all, provide another quick update to you on the Southwest Corridor Plan at your October briefing. That's an effort still led by Metro at this point in time, but it does have certain recommendations in terms of moving forward, and we wanted to make sure the board is comfortable with that general direction and our role in that. So we'll provide an update to you on that at your October briefing. I'd also note that we are underway with Metro again in the lead on a BRT, bus rapid transit study for the PAL Division Corridor, just beginning that, and that will parallel to a large extent our service investment planning efforts that we have underway for generally the area east of I-205. And we'll be tying those two efforts together to try to develop a really strong transit plan for that portion of the region. Again, the service enhancement plan parallels what we did on the west side, and we were previously briefed on that. And this is one of our next priorities to go to the southwest. But again, the PAL Division project would be an attempt to try to provide an enhanced level of high-capacity service on that corridor through southeast Portland. I would also note that there's a very large public engagement process as part of that, and will obviously be part of that. And part of it will also, in addition to the long-term bus rapid transit improvements that may be desirable, will identify short-term service enhancement and other, for example, pedestrian or bus stop improvements that are desirable to do in the near term. I would also note that current funding cycles with the state transportation investment improvement program are underway, and there is a certain amount of money that is allocated for the PAL Division Corridor and certain draft lists, and we'll see where we are this afternoon after a meeting of the regional committee to see if that is preserved as we move forward to the state transportation commission for adoption. So let me note one other project which is in the headlines a lot, which is the Columbia River Crossing project. And as you know, TriMet has been a partner with the state DOTs and others related to CRC from its very onset. And we believe that the transit investment portion of the CRC is actually critical to the region and to the economic growth of the region. And so we're continuing to be a partner with ODOT and the governor's office as we pursue this phased project which you read about in the paper. Again, it would use identified funding sources to actually build the bridge, the light rail project, the interchanges on the Oregon side and the SR 14 interchange on the Washington side. The interchanges north of SR 14 would be deferred until the Washington State legislature or DOT finds the revenue to actually do those improvements, and that would be their own project at that point in time. Our work is being to advance that. We're being funded under current work, a short-term intergovernmental agreement with ODOT, providing us the revenue for the staff to actually do some of the work related to the New Starts process, and again, lining the project up for the federal queue that it has been recommended for. So again, there's the essential features of the project are that Washington DOT remains a proper partner. It will enter into an agreement with the Oregon DOT, and that will establish the detailed working relationship and future operating and maintenance responsibilities related to the highway work. The phase project, we again construct the new bridge, the LRT, and the interchanges that I noted. And the total cost of that phase project is $2.7 billion. Again, and that would be to a large extent funded by the Oregon State contribution, which was approved by the legislature originally, as well as toll revenues and some other federal subvention from the state. The change in this arrangement is that TriMet would become the FTA grantee, which, as you know, is a role that we're very familiar with. We've done now 5, count it, we've been in my tenure at TriMet, full funding grant agreements with the federal government. We're beginning to work through all of those arrangements about what that means related to that new status with ODOT and our partners there, and very easy to work with and very cooperative. But I wanted to just emphasize that there are no TriMet funds committed to the capital cost, just as before. So there's no change in terms of TriMet's, if there's a capital commitment, which is zero, remains at zero for the project overall. Only by reading the headlines, I did see that the C-TRAN board did approve the general manager at C-TRAN to move ahead developing operating agreements for the CRC project last night. And so C-TRAN is still planned as the operating partner, and Washington State who presumably will contract with TriMet to provide the light rail service. So, as you also know, the headlines, in order for the project to proceed, the Oregon legislature must amend the current legislation that says Washington legislature needs to act with their contribution before September 30th. So that presumably will be part of the governor's special session request to the Oregon legislature. That session has not been called yet. So we're waiting, I think, on other items to sort of get the table set on other items before the governor does that. So we do need take actions in the short term, which is why we are into this agreement with ODOT to really advance the paperwork with the FDA and the planning with the FDA. It has changed, obviously, in all of the bookshelf of agreements and documents that actually back a project like this in the federal funding request, change the grantee and to change the project management and administration function from what was previously, as it was previously considered. So all that work is underway, and our staff is really engaged in that. Again, I would note that related to us, no real change from the financial standpoint prior to now, from what we can